It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you all today. Eric already mentioned that our goal here today is to discuss about really why we're here in DC. And that's because we ultimately believe in the importance of engaging with regulators and policymakers at all levels. In addition to being crucial, our work at Elevate requires a more complicated engagement model than ever before seen at Uber. We are now working with products that are primarily regulated at the national level and even beyond through organizations like the International Civil Aviation Organization. So how does this all work together? Let's take a quick look. We're going to use those 4 pillars that Eric just discussed. So we've got electric aircraft, aerial ride sharing, airspace management, and connected skyports. So we have an opportunity then to really hone in on the policy complexities surrounding urban aviation by focusing briefly on connected skyports. Where state and local policymakers have the greatest impact is around the skyport location and zoning. Additionally, issues around noise and flight path placement can all be affected by the will of the community. However, we now must add a substantial layer of complexity, the federal regulations. These regulations dictate all design considerations for the aircraft and certification requirements to ensure the safety of flight. The aerial ride-sharing pillar provides another unique glimpse into the layers of regulations and policy that Uber Elevate faces. Due to the multimodal nature of our product, we have to consider all other facets of ride-sharing policies combined with the issues brought forth by aviation rules and regulations. All of this is to say that each pillar comes with an increasing level of complexity, and understanding this is absolutely key to success. But for a minute, let's focus on the local level. As you know, our 2 launch cities that we're very excited about here in the United States are Dallas, Fort Worth, and Los Angeles. But let's talk about Dallas, Fort Worth for a second. We've begun to lay the groundwork to ensure that we are absolutely community-focused. In fact, only a few weeks ago, we convened our first ever Uber Elevate stakeholders group in the North Texas area. We had representatives from various cities in the Metroplex, transit authorities, airport authorities, our partners, and local organizations. And ultimately, this provides a massive opportunity for our most important stakeholders to meet regularly and collaboratively map out a path towards launch, which is ultimately our key to success. Collectively, we can address issues like noise, zoning, city planning, and general community acceptance. But let's zoom back out for a second. Because as we've talked about, historically, Uber has been hyper-focused on local policies and engagement. And that's for a good reason. Regulating ride-sharing services is very much a local issue. While we believe it's critical that we develop these relationships with our launch cities, it's also necessary for Uber to expand beyond our traditional model. And for our aviation products, this broader engagement is not just important, it's required. Our key stakeholder in the United States for any of our Elevate products is the Federal Aviation Administration. We're excited that you'll hear more from several FAA executives later today, to include Acting Administrator Elwell. Everything that touches our aircraft, from the pilots and mechanics, to the controllers and software, to the literal nuts and bolts, must undergo rigorous certification as outlined by the FAA. So let's further simplify this into 2 additional categories: the aircraft and the operations. Now, looking at just the aircraft alone, we see a host of regulatory requirements, and everything from the aircraft itself to the engine to the maintenance, noise standards, and so on. On the operational side, we see basic requirements, airport requirements, flight training, and again. But for those of you in the room who come from the aviation industry, this is absolutely nothing new. But it's a very important reminder. We recognize that there is no path to market without meeting these requirements. As fast as we want to move, there are limitations. And these regulations exist for a purpose. They're there to keep people safe. So let's simplify this just a little bit further. We're going to pull out 2 categories: Part 23 certification of small airplanes and Part 135 operations. We firmly believe that both of these certification categories provide the best path forward for success. Over the past decade, the FAA and industry have worked collaboratively to revise Part 23 so that it moved away from overly prescriptive standards and instead focus on consensus-based framework. Now, Part 23 allows for the encouragement of innovation and the development of safer aircraft. When the General Aviation Manufacturers Association analyzed the revised Part 23 regulations, they found that around 85% were applicable to eVTOL aircraft. And it's for this reason that we believe Part 23 is the best pathway for certification of these aircraft. For operations, we view on-demand Part 135 as the best fit. And we're working with regulators and our other industry partners to solve core issues around these pilot requirements, particularly as these aircraft evolve. But operational issues like these are not only solved at the FAA level. We also work through collaboration with the Department of Transportation. In fact, Secretary Chow, who you'll hear from shortly, has been instrumental in developing a framework that encourages innovation, particularly in the rapidly growing drone industry. The UAS IPP, which you'll hear all about over the next 2 days, has been an exceptionally successful program that has allowed us to explore drone delivery services with our partner, Uber Eats. In general, the administration has worked diligently to encourage FAA and industry to enhance these new technologies. In addition to DOT and FAA, NASA has really led the way around UTM and airspace integration. FAA and industry are starting to implement UTM and develop the standards for sharing the airspace safely and efficiently. And I'm very excited that we'll hear more from Dr. Jae-Won Shin all about what NASA has done here shortly. All right, we're going to zoom out one final time and look at this from a worldwide perspective. Uber is a global company, and we firmly believe that the future of urban aviation and aerial ride-sharing belongs to the world. To realize this vision, we have spent the past year conducting due diligence in major cities of these 5 countries: Australia, Brazil, India, France, and Japan. So let's do a quick walkthrough of the 5 countries that we looked at and look at some of our engagement. In Japan, we had the absolute pleasure of hosting our APAC summit in Tokyo in August of last year, and we're joined by Governor Yuriko Koike. In Australia, we had the pleasure of meeting with several key policymakers and regulators. Here we're seen with the Honourable Gordon Rich Phillips in the Victorian Parliament House. In India, Eric and Nikhil had the immense honor of sitting down to discuss urban aviation with Prime Minister Modi. In Brazil, we had several key meetings to include the Governor Doria of Sao Paulo. And in France, we worked to establish the Advanced Technology Center in Paris, which was jointly formed by DARA and President Macron. But an important thing is, what were we actually looking at? There are 5 key factors that fell into this evaluation criteria that were essential to this decision. The first, market factors. Is the economy viable? Can there be full utilization of the Uber Air product in each respective country? Environmental factors. For initial service, Uber Air must be operated in a location that has generally favorable weather. This is primarily due to the fact that these aircraft will initially be operated under visual meteorological conditions. Policy and regulations is a key area. A supportive and innovative regulator is absolutely essential to success. Without rules and regulations that enable new technology, Uber Air will not be able to launch within the next few years. And additionally, having support at the local level and state level is crucial. For infrastructure, utilizing a city with existing infrastructure and existing routes can really help to expedite market entry. And finally, Uber's perspective and strategy. As we've talked about, Uber, this whole product is a multimodal product, and therefore we must have a successful ground business to tie into. So these were the 5 areas that ultimately informed our decision, of which we'll be announcing later today. So we've traveled the world, and now it's time to focus back in on the United States. As I said, you'll be hearing all about urban aviation around the world later today, but right now we want to talk about the regulatory environment in the United States. So to really dive into this issue, we thought it would be crucial to bring in executives from our leading stakeholders, the FAA, NASA, and the General Aviation Manufacturers Association.